how to use it. We're going to talk about the trends in self-employment and how that's changed, particularly in this new century. We're going to look at how you can take the skills you have in traditional W-2 work and repurpose them for your own career in self-employment. And we want to help you think about how to get ready to launch such a career and provide you with some partnership ideas through partnership discussions. So that's our general agenda. Sherry, you want to add any points here?
No, I think we're good. Let's just jump in.
Okay. So let's talk about the rise in self-employment in the current period of time. It may be surprising to people, but the truth of the matter is that 42 million of our fellow citizens are currently in the category of self-employment. And more than a third actually have higher earnings, higher incomes than those in traditional jobs, meaning those in W-2 work. For those of you confused about W-2 and self-employment, look, W-2 is that nice little slip you get at the end of the year so you can fill out your income tax form.
And, if you're working for a traditional employer.
If you're working for a traditional employer, yes. If you're going to go into self-work, we're going to see about 1099. We're going to talk about that later, so don't worry about it at the moment. Now, it might be surprising as well that data from the U.S. Department of Labor indicates that there are actually more older workers who are engaging in self-employment than our younger counterparts. And at the bottom of the screen here, you see an article that'll bring that into perspective for you if you'd like to read it. Again, at the end of this presentation, we're going to let you know how you can get copies of the slide and other resources from BoomerWorks. So don't worry about it now. We'll make sure that you have those things before this evening is completed. As I said, remember, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We're watching it. Now, we're engaged in a talent revolution, and this is what's changing in our lives. The fact of the matter is that new technology is advancing at an alarmingly fast rate, and the whole idea of globalization and market disruptions that have hit us either within our own communities, around the country and around the world, it's all about a different way of seeing the market in which we're all going to engage, and a great desire for flexibility and agility in employment, and that leads to this idea of self-employment as a real option for all of us to think about. Now, again, at the bottom of the screen, you're going to find an article which speaks to this idea of the rising of freelance work after the COVID-19 finally does its thing. Again, remember, you'll be able to go online, find all these resources at the end, so you don't have to be busy writing all this down or worrying about it over the next few minutes.
And Michael, I'll just interject here that I recently saw somebody write that all of this talent revolution, the technology, the globalization is actually really the industrial revolution of our time. It has changed the way that we work. And of course, post-COVID, we're already seeing people shift to platforms like this. In fact, interestingly, this is a really good example. We at BoomerWorks, Michael's actually been hosting a live version of this for the last year in Laurel, Maryland. And we had been and still plan to do some of these in person. And we were thinking, oh, well, one day, we'll do sort of a virtual option like this. Well, sure enough, COVID threw us right into this because we had no other option. And look how many people we have here, 142 registrants tonight, which certainly we could not have fit into any normal facility. So I think employers are really starting to get wind of this, and I think really things are going to change. It's going to create a lot of opportunities for remote workers and for freelance workers, virtual workers than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, these changes are pretty remarkable. Technology, globalization, workforce. and this need for lifelong learning. You know, we've heard all these phrases, but they're all coming together now and making it more and more important for us to think about work in a new and different way. And self-employment is one of those options. I know personally, I never really thought much about self-employment, and my good friend Shara actually got me into it, and it's been a wonderful experience for me. And I think once you learn about it and take the steps, this could be one option for you, either as full-time employment or as a supplement to the kinds of things you are already doing. We're also engaged, if we want to move in this area, into thinking a little bit differently. Like most of you, age 50 and above, the shift to a freelance or small business ownership requires us to have a kind of mind shift. Most of us spend our careers working for somebody else. So when you have an opportunity and you want to think about the mindset and you want to read a little bit more about this, I want to once again recommend to you that you go to boomerworks.org, look on the resource page. The number of articles and material there will really be helpful in helping you fix how you might look at this change that's impacting us individually and as a society as a whole.
And I'll also jump in here to let everyone know that at the very end of this presentation, there's going to be a slide with a number of suggested reading materials. Several books will be up there. One of them is actually called The Gig Mindset. It's by a gentleman named Paul Estes, E-S-T-E-S. So look out for that when we're at the end of the presentation.
So what we're trying to say back to you is that this shift requires some new thinking and understanding the new world of work and how it is that we individually and collectively fit into it. We need to think of through the that we've all learned and used in our W-2 work and see how it is that we can transfer them to the self-employment option or journey that you might be on. In just a short little period of time, Cher is going to actually walk you through an exercise to help you with this process of thinking through the kind of skills that you've earned and learned and how they can be repurposed in a self-employment world. Also, I want to mention that there is a real opportunity here for very significant income. And you can, by the work you decide to do, either build a side position or a full-time job. And it is work that you've always wanted to do, this great idea of such meaningful work that is yours. So between the mindset shift, repurposing of your W-2 skills, and this wonderful opportunity to have a steady income and meaningful work that is important to you is all part of the journey towards self-employment. Now, no journey comes without work. So let's talk for just a few moments about this idea of your experience being your expertise. All of us have learned skills over the years that we use. Some of those skills came from our work. Some of those skills come from our volunteer activity or our faith community work or our hobbies, our volunteerism and the like. Together, all those things are a series of skills that make up the body of our work that could be repurposed in a self-employment context. Some of them we got paid for, and some of them we didn't get paid for, but nonetheless, they were all jobs. Anybody that's ever coached a kids' team, excuse me, done volunteer work at a food bank or at your church or synagogue, all of these things have a kind of job. Some of them you just don't get paid for. And excuse me again. And all of these collectively are the components of a career, not only the one you have, but the one you could have. And that becomes your journey to self-employment. So from all these rich sources of learning, you gain communications, facilitation, some personal joy, and they're a collection of community and faith engagements that make up your expertise. And in an exercise, as I mentioned, that Cheryl will walk you through in just a little bit, you'll have an opportunity to see how it is that you might transfer those pieces to the self-employment platform. Excuse me. I don't have anything, folks. I just have a frog in my throat. So let's think about this self-employment journey. Now, look, in any new activity, there are advantages and there are challenges. So we've listed here some advantages and some challenges that might occur. I'm just going to walk through these relatively quickly, and then we're going to take a poll to see where you fit in and our group fits in with these various advantages or challenges. First, on the advantage side, there's this wonderful opportunity to reinvent yourself, to have a flexible schedule like you've always hoped for, income potential that you determine. It's not determined by somebody in the HR office somewhere. You have this opportunity to create multiple streams of revenue. Multiple streams of revenue. I can tell you for myself, when I started this, I'm sorry about that, folks. Let me make sure that that ends. Okay. There are multiple opportunities for revenue streams. When I started in this thing, I was really just doing training for boards of directors. That's about the only thing I did, the not-for-profit boards of directors. Today, I have a speaking career. I still do the training. I do coaching, and I have publications that I sell. So what started out as one focus has led to multiple revenue streams in my own case. And I'm sure as you begin this journey, you'll find similar things in your own path. The nicest thing is you pursue the thing that you're most passionate about. That's a great, great advantage. And on the other side, think of it this way. You're not going to have to put up with all that office politics when you're talking to yourself. So those are some of the advantages. On the other side, of course, there are challenges in any new venture. So one of them is, as I mentioned before, income is an issue, and you're not going to get paid on the 1st or the 15th or every other Friday. A lot of it has to do with your own ability to generate income. And that means that you need to have sales skills, which you probably have, may know well, or may not. And, you're going to have to make some investment. It may not be a huge investment, but you're going to have to make some investment, so there could be a loss of some personal savings along the way. And if you are like most people, myself included, risk is something that's hard to take, particularly when you're considering your family. You may have children that are getting ready to go off to college. You may have sick older parents that you have to. So risk aversion is an issue that is a challenge for all of us. And crazy as it sounds, even though we know this work very, very well, the truth is that sometimes we lack the full confidence we need to make that tick. And on the other side, if you've worked in the W-2 world most of your life, you're pretty used to your employer determining your benefits. They may pay for some of them. You may pay for some of them. There may be some joint payment of benefits. But they have a list, and that's usually what you get. And of course, you're going to have to take a journey where you're going to be responsible for all that on your own. And of course, you have to find people to buy your service or your product. So you're going to have to learn to find your clients. So with that in mind,
actually, Michael, if I can jump right in before
oh
you take
yes,
the
of
call.
course, sure.
So actually earlier in the chat, somebody asked about ageism. Is that a factor? To what extent is that a factor? And I actually want to put that in the advantage column rather than the challenge column, surprisingly. And here's why. When one is looking for traditional W-2 employment, a regular job, like most of us have had in our lives, that actually is where ageism really plays out, which is actually why boomer works exist, because there's still a lot of it in this country, and actually around the world. And generally speaking, most employers tend to hire people between the ages of 25 and 45. They may not admit it, they may not say it publicly, but that's generally what happens. Even actually, recent grads get discriminated against the other side, but we're not talking about them today. Today we're talking about seasoned folks. But because of that, right, when you look at the other side, when you look at self-employment, the reverse happens. Because when a person is self-employed, there's sort of this implied sense of credibility. And as we know, with age, with seasonedness, tends to come more credibility, right? That sense of, hey, you know what you're doing. So if anything, gray hair or colored gray hair can be an advantage, because then the employer pay for, but that they actually want to spend the money to do. And in different economies, that changes, right? But at the same time, if the more flexible you can be to repurpose your skills and look out into the market and say, what do people really need right now? And to what extent does that align with what I'm able to offer them? So we'll be talking about that more as we do some exercise.